Champions Cup Saturday games. There's been a wee bit of disruption with a couple of games called off, namely Leicester and Bordeaux. Both those teams are through, so no big dramas, but Bordeaux missed out on a chance to qualify a bit higher than they otherwise would have. And then Toulouse and Cardiff, who are currently sitting in the bottom of the qualifying spots, but by no means is their qualification set, with teams like Cast and Wasps who could potentially displace them. The Cast game is currently going on as I speak against Quins, but we'll kind of see how that one plays out. So yeah, these two games, Cardiff get a 28-0 win, and likewise Leicester. So yeah, kind of interesting times in the Champions Cup. Of the 4 games that are going to be played, the first one is Bath and Leinster. Goodness gracious me. Bath would have seen what happened to Montpellier last week and will be bracing for impact, because Leinster, having had that one result taken from them with the COVID cases, were certainly out for blood last week. Hopefully for Bath's sake, they got a lot of that out of their system, and at the Rec, Bath will need to be as good as they can be. I don't think any team is actually, as I record this, fully out yet, because you only have to finish in the kind of top 8 teams to get through. But I'm pretty sure Bath would need 5 points over Leinster, which doesn't seem all that likely. But I mean, what are they going to do? They have named a slightly changed lineup. Leinster's lineup is a bit more stable. As I said, kind of Leinster with 10 points. They're not a shoo-in, but yeah, the teams on 11 points have essentially got through in their pool. So Leinster probably should go through, but like every team will be looking to finish as high as they can. Bath have moved Clark to 13, Redpath to 12. Remember, he played 10 last week. Purdy switched wings. Orlando Bailey's back in. Sam Underhill's back in. Spencer's up from the bench into the second row. Will Stewart's back in at tight head, and Arthur Caldwell is in there at loose head. Jacques Dutoy is starting at hooker. So it's a bit of a rotated squad from the one that played last week. I mean, obviously, if you get a guy like Underhill back, that's certainly good news. Orlando Bailey has, despite the fact that I keep forgetting his name, he's been doing really well this season. He's earned himself an England call-up, so again, that's kind of good news if you're a Bath fan. For Leinster, I mentioned their lineup's pretty stable from the team that just went to town on Montpellier last week. So it's still Kelleher and Porter in the front row, but Alatoa is promoted to get a start this week. Tight head Henshaw is also back in the squad, back fit, which is good news. I mean, you still got Keenan at fullback, you still got Lama, you still got Ringrose, Van der Fleer, Conan, like McGrath and Sexton are both up from the bench to start 9-10, so that is kind of one of the changing kind of duos there. It's at the Rec, like I mentioned. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff. Yeah, it's the first game on. I probably won't see this one. I'll watch the highlights. It's not only on at 1 in the morning, but a team which has only won one game in the Premiership up against Leinster is. I'm going to stick my neck out and say Leinster should win this one pretty easy, but there you go. Leinster by 15 according to the Rugby Forecast algorithm, and by 27 according to the bookies. Pretty big favourites. The second one is Ulster and Clermont. Ulster have qualified, Clermont not so much. But as I said, with the other teams, Ulster will be looking to qualify kind of as high as they can. Good win for them over Northampton last week. They are on 14 points, so doing really well. Clermont, they've had a win, a draw, and a loss. Remember, not everybody, but a lot of teams have had draws because of games called off. So, yeah, Clermont will be trying to get anything out of this game to give themselves a chance. Ulster, they got Mike Lowry at fullback. He's one of the new call-ups to the Ireland setup, so we'll see what he can do with that little bit of added extra pressure. Balakoon likewise on the right wing. Angus Curtis has come in at 12, and Eric O'Sullivan's up from the bench to start at loose head, but otherwise the side's pretty much the same as the one that played last week. Doak's still there at 9 because there's still no Cooney. There's still no McCloskey, so some of these guys with injury worries are still not there, likewise Ian Henderson. So they are missing a few of their big guns, but yeah, it's very similar to a side that travelled away last week to beat Northampton. For Clermont, they've made a few changes. They've got a new fullback in. They've put JJ Hanrahan in at 10, so kind of familiar for him to head up to the Kingspan. He'll be played there 1 or 2 times before. Whole new front row with Falgu and Slimani at the props. Lavanini's still there in the second row. They've shifted Van Tonda to number 8. They've brought up Desagny to the number 7 jersey from the bench. So yeah, it's more changes than what Ulster have played with. So yeah, a little bit more in terms of rotation. So I mean, I generally think that if the team is keeping stable, they've got more on the line than the team which is rotating half their squad. So we'll see if that kind of rings true. Ulster for this one are favourites. It's a 5:30 kickoff. 5 points according to the Rugby Forecast algorithm and 7 points according to the bookies. The next one, which is Scarlets and Bristol. Scarlets are pretty much out, like I said, but I don't think any team is quite mathematically out. They would need to get, I think, a 5-point win and a massive points differential on other teams on 7 not to get any points. So kind of take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Bristol's already qualified, having just played the one game, but they've ended up with 2 wins and a draw for 12 points. So they are already through. Both sides with kind of seemingly minimal changes, which is pleasing, especially given that Scarlets, as I said, probably don't have a lot on the line. They've brought in Patchell to start. He was on the bench last week. Johnny McNichol and Liam Williams have swapped jersey numbers because Liam Williams was fullback and McNichol was on the wing last week. Jonathan Davis is captain in the midfield. Sean Evans gets a crack. Morgan Jones and Sam Lowsey are your locks. Wyn Jones, Samson Lee, your props. Ryan Elias. So there's a fair few kind of Welsh internationals starting in this Scarlets lineup. I'm keen to see how Jonathan Davis goes if I do end up seeing this one, because he's one guy that people are saying maybe in terms of Wales form hasn't been necessarily in the best form, but yeah, we'll kind of see how he goes. For Bristol, Pietau's back, which is a bit of good news. He's in there at fullback, which means Morahan shifts to the right wing. Ranradra is still there, interestingly. Speaking of Welsh internationals, Johan Lloyd's there at 12. Pretty small for a 12. Don't know if I've seen him play 12 before, but that is also kind of one to watch. Sheedy's still at 10. Randall's at 9. Randall's been a handful, so he's one guy that the Scarlets guys will definitely need to watch. Yeah, we'll see. Vui's still there. Ed Holmes has come in from the bench to start in the second row. Woolmore's at loose head, so there's yeah, a few changes, but the return of Pietau is certainly a very welcome one. This one also kicks off at 5:30. And Bristol are favourites with both the bookies and the algorithm. Algorithm saying 5, bookies saying 3. Last one is Glasgow and La Rochelle. Glasgow on 5 points, still alive. La Rochelle, 11 points, have qualified in their pool, but can't say it again, they'll want to go as high as they can. Glasgow's lineup, I mean, they got a bit of a shock to the system last week against Exeter. They've kept things relatively stable. Rufus McLean's in. He's in on the left wing, and he's a talent. If you've seen him play for Scotland, you'll know what I'm talking about. Richie Gray is into the second row. Ollie Kebble and Fraser Brown getting starts. Fraser Brown, in terms of Scotland ambitions, is still getting fit, so I'm keen to see how he goes now that he's starting, because he was on the bench last week. But otherwise, the side's pretty much the same. Dempsey, Darge and Ferguson back row. Price and Ross Thompson 9-10. So yeah, very much steady as he goes for the Warriors. For La Rochelle, they've made a few changes. They've brought in Raymond Rule to the midfield. I swear that guy never used to be able to tackle in South Africa, but he must have learned it, because if you can play 13, you need to be able to tackle. Not the first time I've seen him play 13 for La Rochelle, to be fair. Boudnit is moving out to the left wing. Otherwise, the side's pretty much the same. Priso, Bougarit, Antonio, front row, like that's some power right there. That's going to be an area where Glasgow will need to be on form. Kerbalo is there, Dylan Lades, Dulon, a heap of internationals, South African, French, and so on, New Zealand. So yeah, it's a pretty big La Rochelle lineup coming to town. Now, interestingly, this is one, it's an 8 p.m. kickoff, so it's the late game at the Scotsman. It's the one where the split between the algorithm and the bookies as to who's going to win. The algorithm says La Rochelle by 5, but the bookies say Glasgow by 2. So yeah, 4 games on, early kickoff at 1, 2 at 5:30, and then 1 at 8. So you guys will have to let me know how you reckon these 4 games are going to go. As I said, these last 2 have been cancelled with some COVID cases, so we'll see how things go. You guys let me know what you reckon, and I'm going to get back to watching Quins and Cast, which has been a pretty bonkers game so far. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.